So it has been a little while since we had a Jeanette Braun and Lauren The Mortician update, and today we actually now have that update. And I was going to start off this video by giving like a recap of my previous video, but all I could really come up with in my head to keep it short was that Jeanette Braun was being a bit stupid, which I then thought, that could really sum up all these episodes. So I can't keep it as short as I wanted to, but I will still try and keep it as short as possible. So in case you didn't see my last episode, Jeanette Braun and Lauren The Mortician and their attorney actually got told off by the judge. This is because they failed to file their lawsuit correctly. I know, shock. There was a few things that were wrong with it, the main one being where Jeanette Braun actually lives, where she a resident of, where she a citizen of. Because she managed to do it for everybody else, but she was very picky with the words she chose for herself, which made it seem very sketchy. It made it seem as if she was lying. Now this was exposed by Runkle of the Bailey, who was a YouTuber I highly recommend. We are going to be referencing his video later on in this as well. He has been covering this brilliantly. He's an actual attorney. He knows what he's talking about. And when he made this original video, he started guessing as to why this would be the case, why they're being weird about her address. And his theory at the time was that Jeanette was potentially a resident and citizen of California, and the reason why she wouldn't want to say that in the lawsuit is because they have very strict anti-slap laws. So if they filed in California, there was a good chance that they weren't going to win, and it could have went really, really badly for them. Now, it seems like that isn't true, or at least the California part isn't true, but Jeanette is still being very, very weird about her address, which could get her in a lot of bother. I mean, the judge is probably going to get very impatient here. So they've now filed a new jurisdictional statement, which kind of corrects, or at least tries to correct the stuff that the judge wanted corrected. And they've now also filed a motion to seal, which is very funny the way they've done it, because they messed up again. But before we start reading through it, I do just want to give big credit again to Runkle of the Bailey, okay? The information for this part of the video is all from him, so I highly recommend watching his video. He knows a lot more about it than I do, so if you want to hear probably better opinions, I would recommend that. Now, before we get any further into the video, I do just want to tell you about today's sponsor, Babbel. Now, if you're like me, the skill that you wish you had that you just don't have is speaking a different language, and well, thanks to Babbel, you can actually take the first steps to do that. And in fact, I actually took German in school, but up until this year, all I could really remember is Ich spiele Fußball, so I think it's fair to say, this has been quite a nice refresher, and I've realised that learning a language can be really daunting. You might not know what service is right for you, but you don't have to worry because Babbel actually offers a 20-day money-back guarantee, meaning if you're not satisfied with the service within 20 days, you can get your money back. And there's so many languages that you can choose from, right? You have Spanish, French, German, Italian, and so many more. And in fact, to show you how easy it can be, let me show you one of the lessons that you could be expecting here. So this is lesson 2. I've already done lesson 1, learning your hellos, your byes, your thanks, see you laters. And to start off with, it's going to give me a bit of a refresher to make sure that I've remembered what I learned in lesson 1.
Wie geht's dir?
Wie geht's dir, which is how are you? And it even shows you examples of conversations where you need to fill in the blanks. And I've skipped out a few steps for video's sake, but then it will tell you to actually put the words in the right order. So here we have how are you, which is wie geht's dir. Then we have see you later, which is bis später. And then it will tell you your score, to which you can then move on to the next lesson, or if you've got something correct, you might want to do it again. It's a really fun way to learn, and if you too want to learn a new language, you can click the link in the description to get 60% off, and also let me know in the comment section down below what language you would love to learn. But yeah, thank you very much to Babbel for sponsoring today's video, and without further ado, let's get back into it. So let's start with the motion to seal that they filed to protect private information, which in itself is a good thing. It's not usually like Jeanette to respect people's privacy. I mean, she literally called in a fake wellness check on Caffeinated Kitty. So the fact that she was now taking this step and potentially respecting people's privacy, it seemed like a positive. I mean, they've written here saying to protect the privacy of the parties from harassment, plaintiffs seek consent from this court to file its return of service and portions of their supplement jurisdiction statement under seal. Due to the large amount of public attention in this matter, the plaintiffs seek to seal the parties' addresses and the name of defendant Caffeinated Kitty to prevent harassment. Now again, at first glance, this seems like a big positive, but then you just scroll a little bit further down, and she actually names Caffeinated Kitty. I delivered the documents too, and it's been redacted, with identity confirmed by subject saying yes, so on, so on. But obviously, as you can probably guess, this black box is actually covering up Caffeinated Kitty's name. And remember, as they said earlier on, the plaintiffs seek to seal the parties' addresses and the name of defendant Caffeinated Kitty to prevent harassment. But then go on to name her. I mean, they can't do anything right, can they? But let's move on to their response from the judge here, like trying to correct the mistakes that they made previously. So the first line's a big one, and it says, Plaintiff Jeanette Braun is a citizen and resident of Illinois. Yes, she actually said it this time. She said a citizen and resident of Illinois, the same thing that she said for every other person before, but didn't say it for herself. I mean, if it was just left at this, it wouldn't really seem that sketchy anymore, but obviously by the tone of my voice, you can probably tell it wasn't left at this. Now, before we read further in terms of what they're saying about Jeanette Braun and where she lives and whatnot, I just want to read everything that they said about Lauren in this section. Plaintiff Lauren Propson is a citizen and resident of the state of Wisconsin. That's it. Now let's go back to Jeanette Braun and go through every detail that they had to mention about Jeanette Braun's potential residence. Plaintiff is also a licensed attorney in Illinois, where she operates Braun IP Law LLC. Now, if you remember in my previous video, the judge actually requested for them to be specific about the residence of everyone working at Braun IP Law LLC. But instead of saying that Jeanette Braun is the only person who operates out of Braun IP Law LLC, she only mentions that she operates there and leaves it open for interpretation. So as Uncle the Bailey says in his video, she had to be specific here because the judge asked. She had to say Jeanette Braun is the only person who operates at Braun IP Law. So she gets that wrong, which is mental because the judge literally specifically requested for her to specify, and she didn't do it. I mean, it's no secret that you have to be specific in these lawsuits. You have to be overly specific, and especially if the judge comes back to you asking for you to be specific about a certain thing, you need to do it, and they didn't. A law firm organized under the laws of the state of Illinois with a contact address at 1600 W Lake Street, so on, so on. Now, you might be wondering, why am I including this? Why am I not making it private? And it was the exact same thought that I had when I actually watched Uncle the Bailey's video. I was thinking before I even said it, like, whoa, have you just forgot to, like, redact this? Like, what's going on? He then goes on to reveal that this address is a UPS store. It's not an office, it's not a place that she works at, it's a UPS store. So I'm assuming she has, like, a PO box or something there? Is that what we're saying? But if the only address that you're giving here is a UPS store, something very sketchy is going on very clearly. Plaintiff Braun Law has its office and principal place of business in Northbrook, Illinois, engages with Illinois-based law firms, and contributes to local bar association and community events. So straight away you can see that she's trying to give more and more details about this whole, like, being a resident of Illinois, even though she only used one line for Lauren. She then goes on to say 6 paragraphs for herself. Like, if it was as simple as you are a resident and citizen of Illinois, why do you have to go so over the top of it? Why are you including so much information and using very key words? I mean, in fact, in Uncle the Bailey's video at this point, he makes me laugh because he's saying, like, what are you going on about here? Like, this is too much.
Who cares? The court just told you that the citizenship of Braun Law is the citizenship of its members. So it doesn't matter what Braun Law does. It can, whatever it does in Illinois is irrelevant. You need to tell us about the citizenship of its members, and you don't even plead the membership of Braun Law in this.
Yeah, there just seems to be something sketchy going on here. She is adamant that she wants to keep this in Illinois, even though it really seems like it shouldn't be. Obviously, just guessing here. Now, Uncle the Bailey does have his theories that we will get into later on in the video, but the way she's going on about this whole Illinois thing, it's really bizarre. Especially when they have the option there to file at a Lawrence place of residence, was it Wisconsin or something like that? They could easily do that, but they are so adamant about doing it in Illinois, even though it seems really sketchy. And this is where it goes from just being sketchy to just straight up comedic, because it goes on to say, while plaintiff Jeanette Braun does own property and spends part of the year in South Carolina, her primary and long-standing economic, familial, oh god, too many big words for me, man. Do you not know I struggle to read? Her primary and long-standing economic and familial and professional ties remain in Illinois, evidenced by her Illinois-based medical care providers, accountants, and legal and business advisors, and so on. Again, using very vague words. She's refused to be specific here. Like, she does own property in South Carolina and spends part of the year. How long's apart? How long are we talking here? Because this is clearly very important information. The judge literally came back to you and said you need to be specific where you're a citizen and resident of, and you're still being really vague. Now, of course, this does beg the question, why is she being vague? Why is she so adamant that she wants this to be in Illinois when clearly something's going on here? Now, like I mentioned before, Uncle the Bailey does have his theories. Now, his first one being the fact that Benjamin Lockyer, I believe, who's the attorney for this case, actually went to the same law school as Jeanette Braun. They know each other. Also, apparently, which I found hilarious, this law school is like a very small one, but also not rated that highly. Who would have guessed it? But the theory is here, because they know each other, Benjamin Lockyer could be doing this as a favour, and they want to keep the costs down, and they don't want to pay for flights to go to a different place, right? If they're going to file it somewhere else.
But I'm wondering if Lockyer Law isn't doing some of this as a favor or for exposure. And the thing about doing a favor or doing something for exposure is you got to keep your costs down, which means they really don't want to have Mr. Lockyer from Illinois having to deal with stuff in South Carolina where suddenly things get real expensive, because then he's got to get flights, he's got to get this, he's got to get that. And so if this whole lawsuit depends on it being run on the cheap because they've got a friendly face, that would explain a whole lot of things that otherwise I struggle to explain.
I mean, I feel like that's a very good theory, right? Like, why would they spend so much money on this case that doesn't really look that good for them. It doesn't look that promising. So if this is being done as a favor, which isn't the craziest assumption to make, right? They are friends, they went to the same law school. It seems like Benjamin Lockyer doesn't have the most experience in the world because he's getting a lot of stuff wrong consistently. So if he is doing this as a favor, of course they want to keep the cost down, and they can do that from Illinois if that's where they are. Which would make sense why they are so adamant to have it in Illinois, even though it doesn't really seem to make sense. Now, Runkle the Bailey says that this would explain why they are using the same lawyer, right? Because it should be a conflict of interest. They should have separate lawyers. I'm talking about Lauren and Jeanette, but they're using the same lawyer.
Would also explain some things like, oh, why is Jeanette Braun and Lauren Propson, why are those two sharing a lawyer? Because from the outside, this looks like those two might have conflicts of interest, and them suing together might actually create risks to solicitor-client privilege as between Braun and Propson. So to me, this would be a situation for you need two lawyers, not one lawyer. But if they're doing this on the cheap because they're getting this as a favor, and this is something we'll never know.
And yeah, I mean, as much as I don't obviously know as much as Runkle the Bailey here, I can't help but agree. It feels like this could be the case. It's definitely a possibility, right? You can't rule it out. And it would also explain why they're using the same lawyer. Like, a client and her attorney are using a separate lawyer for their defamation lawsuit. It all seems a bit weird. I mean, everything about Jeanette seems very, like, weird and sketchy at this point, but this specifically, it doesn't make sense. Now, just to finish this video, I do want to look at a podcast that Lauren The Mortician was on recently, and I was made aware of this from an Amy Robinson video, and I highly recommend watching that, right? She gives a bunch more details I haven't mentioned in this video, and as much as she doesn't go on to talk about the lawsuit much in this, she goes on to talk about her job, more specifically, like, the mortician stuff. There are a few things about this podcast that are funny. First of all, the person hosting the podcast is an attorney, which seems absolutely bizarre to me because he is brown-nosing Lauren the whole time. Like, I'm talking, like, major brown-nosing in this podcast. And I can't help but feel like if you read the lawsuit that's going on, they do reference it, so it seems like he's aware of it. Is he not going to sit there and think, this is fucking stupid, I should mention something? But in fact, he actually goes on to do the opposite and just defends Lauren in this case.
You are a TikTok and social media personality. And as an attorney, I will not ask you to comment on your pending case, but it's actually quite good.
Is it? Like, at what point in this case can you describe Lauren and Jeanette's contribution as good? To me, it just seems like he either hasn't read it or he's just blinded by the fact that he's got this big TikToker on. I mean, he goes on to say at the beginning of this podcast a lot that this is like the biggest guest he's ever had, right? He's really excited about it. So maybe it is just brown nosing, which he does a lot in his podcast, but we're not going to go into all of that. It's a bit irrelevant. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't describe it as good. I wouldn't say that.
I think it involves some people trying to besmirch your credibility and your good name.
Yeah, no, I feel like she's done that pretty good on her own. Remember, we are talking about a situation here that all started because her ego couldn't take the fact that a professional in a certain field knew more about that field than she did. Of course, I'm talking about the child seat, who have been through it a lot, but that's how this all started. She then went and called up a fake wellness check on a person. She literally got the police to their home for no reason, and now she's currently suing people for defamation because they voiced their opinions. And then even further on top of that, they are now having to refile this lawsuit multiple times because they keep getting stuff wrong. So at what point is this good? I would love to know that. And like I mentioned before, she doesn't go on to talk about the lawsuit. Of course, you can't really talk about pending lawsuits as it is, and I can't imagine she would say anything good anyways. But yeah, this podcast was just a bit bizarre. I did skip through it a lot, but every time I would play it again, it would just be like the podcast host was brown nose and Lauren. It's a weird listen. I just thought it was mental listening to this when it was coming from an attorney, you know? But either way, I'm going to leave the video there. If you did enjoy, please do a like down below. Subscribe if you are new. Also, let me know your opinions on everything we spoke about in the comment section down below. Also, on top of that, can I just say, I did mention in my 9-month cruise video that I'm going to try and get 25,000 likes. Thought that was absurd. Thought that was never going to happen. As I'm recording this video, right, what are we on? Let me have a look. It is currently on 22,000 likes in 20 hours. So you lot are fucking mental. I didn't think that was even possible. I think that is by far the biggest like goal I've ever set. I mean, I haven't really set many before, but I've never set one that big. And it looks like you lot are going to hit it. So, yeah, I'm going to look into it. I'm going to see if I can get a sponsor. And then if I can't, then maybe it's coming out of my own pocket. A business expense might be in the works. But either way, I'll look into it. And, yeah, until the next one, I'll see you guys in a bit. All right, goodbye.